everyone. Welcome to, it's been a while actually, another session of Exploration Tech. We've been doing a few LinkedIn Live sessions lately, which has been a lot of fun and interesting for us to try out. But I couldn't be more excited to have Kelly Tranto with us today. Email is super fascinating to me because that's how I'm primarily engaging with customers and prospects. And I joked about it in a comment on Adam Tranto's post earlier today about how we get all these emails, and it's sometimes fun to look at them and say, what are you trying to do here, Mr. or Mrs. Email? But anyhow, my name is Jared Heckbar. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Brilliance. I could totally go down a rabbit hole with that, but I'll let Kelly do that. I've been at Brilliance for 5 years. I thoroughly have enjoyed it, and really looking forward to the conversation today. I'm going to pass it to my boss and fearless leader, Lori McDonald.
Well, thanks, Jared. And yes, I'm also so excited about this conversation that we're having today, a little bit about myself and about Brilliance. I started Brilliance in 1998. My background's in computer and electrical engineering. What most people remember about me is that I worked at NASA Johnson Space Center as a flight controller for the space shuttle program, which was a super fun and cool experience. I ended up meeting my husband there. He eventually went to work for Rockwell Automation and had a promotion that brought us to Rockwell's headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I was trying to figure out what could be as cool as space. And so I decided to start a web development company. We found that we were kind of uniquely equipped to work with manufacturers and distributors, helping them to implement digital commerce solutions. And 9 years ago, my husband actually left his job at Rockwell, and now he leads our development team, and we've grown. We made the Inc. 5000 list last year. It's been a lot of fun. And as a part of that growth story, Adam Tranto joined our team, and through that I got to know Kelly and was so excited because, you know, as a part of our growth, my background's in engineering, and before I was lucky enough to have Jared leading marketing at Brilliance, I had my hands in it. You know, email is such an important part of every organization's marketing strategy, which I know we're going to get into here today. And, you know, especially from a B2B perspective, and there's just so much to it. There's so much to know. And Kelly has so much great expertise in it. Even as we were prepping for the conversation we're going to have today, I was asking questions that were really just more for me. And I already am learning so much. So Kelly, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself.
So to keep this excitement rolling, I too am really excited to be here. So thank you, Lori and Jared, for having me. I have over 10 years experience in email marketing, and a lot of my background has been in marketing automation, more on the consulting side. So I have a lot of years working at an agency where I got to work with B2B and B2C companies, helping them improve how they're using email from a marketing perspective, as well as how the sales team is using email. So it's something that I live and breathe. I'm super passionate about it. Happy to answer any questions, keep the conversation going. So feel free to throw your questions as we go.
I'd highly recommend connecting with Kelly on LinkedIn, as well as, if you don't mind, giving Brilliance a follow as well. Let's jump into it. So, Kelly, is email dead?
It's a good question, and it's funny because out in the industry you hear about, you know, email's dead, it's the dying channel. And I think there's an aspect of email that is dead. And that aspect is your big batch and blast email marketing to tons and tons of people that have no idea who you are. And email has evolved, and that's where you start to see the benefit of email marketing. So this other aspect of it where you get really targeted and personalized and segmented, and you're actually having that one-on-one conversation you know, with your target list, that's the part that's booming. That's where you see businesses getting the most ROI from it. And as a digital channel, it's the most cost effective. It has, you know, within the top 3 of digital channels, highest ROI. It has the most capabilities for measuring and testing and automating, so you can be more timely and relevant. So I would say no, it can't die, because it's a great channel for us to communicate with the people that want to hear from us and deliver that value right into the inbox.
Yeah, I think that's, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, Lori, please. We're both so excited to be talking to Kelly. We can't decide who's going to go first. Go ahead.
I am so excited. Well, and I love the fact that you bring out that aspect of it that is in fact dead. And I think that's the piece of email that we all find so annoying, right? When we get those emails that we have no clue who this person is, and they just hit us up because they bought this list, and clearly no effort has actually been put into their strategy around that email they're sending us. When none of us want to look like that person. And yet knowing that there's another way, that like email doesn't have to be that your email strategy really can be better. That's hopeful and good news for me, for all of us, I think.
And Lori, that's just it. It's, when you get those emails in your inbox, which is a ton of them, we all get them, and you skim right over them. You skip them, you don't open them because you don't know who they're from. And many of the times from a sales email perspective, all they're doing is asking you for your time. So the way to be most effective with your email marketing is to provide them value in their inbox. And that's the relationship that you're going to have with them. And that's when they're going to start to come back to those emails. But at a bigger picture, I mean, that's your brand. That's your company. You're starting that relationship. So if it's negative and you just keep asking them for their time or for them to fill out the survey or to give them a demo when you haven't even introduced yourself yet, that's the part where it starts to hurt your business because you're not providing them value.
The pandemic obviously threw businesses into a whirlwind in a variety of ways. In marketing as a whole, I think you saw several organizations trying to pivot and take on new ideas and philosophies on how they could continue to engage with organizations. How did it affect email?
It's been really interesting, over the last year to see the trends in email and how that's changed. And a lot of companies have pivoted, but also done a lot of testing to figure out how they can capitalize on what's happening. So basically what we saw is people being home, they're engaging in their inbox a lot more than they ever used to. So between 2019 and 2020, it was an increase of engagement by 20%, which is huge. Businesses are now starting to send even more, like almost 2 times more email volume, and seeing the same type of engagements because that's just what people are doing right now. But also keeping in mind of, days and times and testing to make sure you're, hitting your audience the right way. But as an industry, typically it's like, your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are your best send days. Tuesdays, Thursdays have always performed the best. But with the pandemic, actually Mondays started to rise and actually surpass Thursday. So right now, like your Monday, Tuesdays are your best days. And it's just so bizarre. We need to keep an eye on it and stay on top of it because these shifts are just happening, month over month. But, it's been interesting.
I'm curious, we've been talking about the people that we don't want to be, that are just mass blasting everyone. But as we think about creating a great email strategy, how do companies go about building their list? Like what do you recommend?
I mean, there's a lot of ways you can be building your list, and there's so many reasons as to why you have to continually be building your list. But I would say one that's missed the most is using your website property as that tool. And people that are coming to your website are already interested a little bit, but how do you continue that conversation? How do you capture them? So I would always recommend that one of the primary objectives of your website is to be able to capture that audience and continue that conversation with them. So having a dedicated page that tells them exactly what they're going to get, the benefit of it. Are you sending industry insights? Are they the first to know? Are you going to be sending it weekly, monthly, quarterly? So it's setting good expectations of what they'll get, going back to that value, for the information they're giving you, and using your primary nav, your footers, different CTAs that drive back to there in order to capture them. Another good tactic on the website is using pop-ups. So, there's different platforms like Sumo that will give you a pop-up after someone's been there for 20 seconds, let them know, hey, we have this newsletter, or hey, we're gonna send you, maybe it's an offer. But a website is a really great way to do that and always have it feeding that funnel. Other ways to do that would be through like lead generation efforts. So basically you're giving them something that they're interested in exchange for their information. And you have to balance what you're asking them for. So you're not going to ask them for the social security card number for a white paper, right? Like it's not appropriate. You're not going to ask for 25 fields for access to watch a video. So you need to balance what information you need to capture in order to continue that conversation against what you're giving them. So things of value you could provide would be white papers, infographics, videos, blogs, maybe it's an offer. Sweepstakes are really great. You're giving them something that either they personally want or something they can use for their business. It allows them to engage with you in a fun way, and then you can use that to promote. But many times with lead generation, it's using those channels to capture, the lead for lead generation, but you have to use awareness channels to promote it from an advertising standpoint. So how do you get in front of the audience to even let them know you have this great thing of value? So you're using your awareness channels, which would be, media, PR, social, organic, and paid. Once again, your website, SEM, SEO, print and digital advertising. So those are your awareness channels to get in front of the audiences, and then give them something to be the hook. But then you have to think through, now what is that experience? How do you remain top of mind? How do you keep that conversation going, giving them something to look forward to in their inbox?
Yeah, I love that. I know I was talking to one of our customers who's a manufacturer, and they were sharing that they had staff members who they had calling on their distributor channels and contractors that work with their products, and like telling them what they would be providing of value in an attempt to build their list. So a very like manual effort in some sense, and that's really been beneficial for them. So it's really interesting to me, like to your point in thinking about what are we going to offer that's going to be valuable? Like what are we giving in return for the ask? Who are the people we want on the list, and ensuring we create that the right way. So yeah.
Absolutely. And just because we're talking about email marketing, I do want to do my little plug for compliance. So, with email marketing, there are different laws in different areas. So the things you need to be considerate of is if you are capturing people from Canada or from European countries, you're talking about CASL for Canada, GDPR for European countries. And there are laws that we have to abide by here in the US, but we're a little bit more flexible on that type of opt-in that we get. So I would say if you are capturing information, you're getting that opt-in from people from Canada, European countries, be sure to brush up on those laws just to make sure there are no fines in your future.
We had some excellent questions come through the registrants, and one was in regards to pruning a list and the harm associated with keeping older information, older contacts subscribed to a list that aren't engaging with that campaign. Can you speak to why it's important to clean a list?
I was so excited when this question came through because it's something that it's super techie and nerdy on the back end, but it's so important to your system. So I am going to get a little bit techie here, but every email sending platform, so your MailChimp, your Pardot, your, whether it's a small, mid-size, or large enterprise system, every email sending platform has a sender reputation. And that is based off of a sender score. And your sender score is kind of like your credit score. So it's an algorithm, it's built over time, it tells you the health of your system. So basically what that score is going to do is it's going to let the email providing platforms like Google, Yahoo, it's going to tell them whether or not your system sending to them is trustworthy. So if you abuse your system, and I'll get to that in a second, your score is going to go down, and then those systems aren't going to see you as trustworthy, and it's going to hurt your deliverability efforts in the future. So you might have people that are super engaged, opening all your emails, but you still keep these old emails on here that aren't doing anything. Maybe you got a lot of bounces, things like that. It's like, we're just going to keep them on there. It's going to hurt your probability of sending to your good email addresses, your engaged people in the future. That's, the gist of it. But some of the things that your sender score is looking at is the cleanliness of the people you're sending to. So it looks at hard bounces and soft bounces and how they're engaging in the inbox. So if they read the email above you and the email below you but skip you, and everyone's skipping you, that too is going to impact that score. One of the hard-hitting ones is if they mark you as spam. That's really bad for your sender reputation. The deliverability rate is something you certainly want to keep an eye on because that's going to be a reflection of the health of your data as well as your sender score. So I always say if it's below 95%, that to me is a red flag. We need to start to look into this list and see what's going on. So when you're pruning your list, things you want to do is remove hard bounces. So hard bounce happens when you're never going to reach that inbox. There's no need to keep that email address on your list. It's not active, it's been shut down. So hard bounces should be removed. Email invalids should be removed. Same thing. You're not going to be able to send to them. They're not a valid email address. Maybe they missed the @ symbol or had a typo. Maybe they gave you a Mickey Mouse email address on purpose. So those are invalid emails. You want to remove those. People that continually soft bounce. So this is something to keep an eye on if you're sending a high volume of emails. So if John Smith is soft bouncing, 2 or 3 times within the last 2 weeks, then it's something that I need to consider. We might not be able to get to them. Maybe they're not qualified as a hard bounce. Maybe it still is a valid inbox, but maybe their spam where it doesn't let me in. There's a lot of different things that we need to keep an eye on. So if we're not able to deliver to people continuously soft bouncing, it's going to hurt your sender reputation. Get rid of them. And the last thing to keep an eye on is your invalid leads. So people that just haven't engaged with you, maybe the last 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. If they're not home anymore, if they're not interested in getting it, I always recommend putting them into a different group. So remove them from all the campaigns you have going on and put them into like a re-engagement campaign. Give them something of high value. Maybe it's, maybe 3 email communications. If they don't bite, get rid of them. They're not doing any good for your system. They're not doing any good for your business. Or maybe find a different channel to communicate with them on. Use those email addresses to do retargeting on social, or find a different way to use them instead of sending them email. Does that
Really
answer
good
the question?
So good. So I was going to say, now I have all sorts of things, Jared, I'm going to be asking you about.
I know, right? Thanks, Kelly. We did have a question come in that was in relation to the compliance piece
Cool.
around. So they sell in North America, or the U.S. primarily. They only sell in the U.S. Can they skip the cookie warnings?
So your cookie warnings are going to be, this is where it gets a little complicated. It's going to be a little bit different based on state. So here in the US, so California this last year just started to come out with some new laws around, cooking and cookie data. And there's new laws coming out with third-party cookies versus first-party cookies. I would say your best bet, keep the cookie warnings on there. All it's doing is communicating to them that you are going to be monitoring what they're doing on there. And it's a way to show that you're trustworthy, that you're being very open and honest, and it's going to make you compliant across all states, as well as set you up for success in the future. So I know they're a pain in the butt. I think we're all kind of getting used to, clicking yes, I accept your cookies, or if you're that person, saying no. But that's your preference. That's how you want to be tracked and monitored and communicated to. And it's always good to give someone that option, and it enhances the trustworthiness.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice from the perspective that I think more privacy legislation may be in our future too. And it gives you the position as a company of being clear, setting good expectations for how you're using people's data. So that's really great advice,
Exactly.
Kelly. So when we think about our email strategy, what are the different types of emails we should be considering?
So there's a lot of different ways to use email marketing, and you can bucket it a lot of different ways. And if you start to research this, you'll see everyone categorizes them all differently. But in general, I would say you have newsletters. So maybe it's monthly, quarterly, maybe it's weekly. And typically it's talking about, here's the latest and greatest of maybe what you missed, or here's some topics that might be appropriate to you. I like newsletters for the fact that it does allow someone to subscribe and continually get something on that set cadence. But you also need to monitor how much content you're putting into a newsletter, because you might have one really great thing you want them to know and understand, but then you have 5 other things that are kind of we should put them in our newsletter. But the more things you put into an email communication, the more diluted your primary objective is going to be. So you always want to balance what's going to provide the most value to the person receiving this versus what are the things I just want to put in there to meet some internal objectives. So making sure that we're putting the right content into your newsletters. Other good ones are autoresponders. Someone just did a purchase, maybe it's a receipt, maybe it's a thank you for doing something. Some people use autoresponders to deliver an asset. So if I filled out a form for white paper, I'm going to send it to your inbox. And the great thing about that is they need to give you a valid email address in order to do it. But also it checks to make sure that you have a valid email address. So once you can ensure that that email's been delivered, great, now they made it onto your list, maybe for your newsletter. You can do milestone emails. So these are looking at like whether it's an anniversary or a survey, or maybe they've met some type of milestone you have internally, like a loyalty program. You've reached this threshold, therefore you get this next thing. But one of my favorites is a welcome series. And so that too kind of falls into the autoresponder bucket. But let's go back to the website example. You have this page on there, they're signing up, they want to get the latest and greatest, and they give you your information right away. You should send them something in their inbox and say like, great, you're a member. Kind of makes you feel like you're part of something. But here's some great content for you in the meantime. Expect your first, newsletter on X date. So it's a way to start that relationship and get them looking forward to what's next. It's also a way to start providing value right away. So it's a good relationship builder right off the bat, and they typically perform pretty well. We have like lead nurtures. I'm sure everyone's heard all about these lead nurturing campaigns, but typically those are built to align to each stage of the buying cycle. So everyone's, funnel is going to be built a little differently. Your stages might be called something else, but you might have awareness, consideration, active evaluation, purchase. Let's not forget about the post-purchase and what that cycle looks like. But it's types of information that are appropriate to send to people at different stages of that funnel based on their relationship with you or how much you know about your products. So someone that's newly come into the funnel, you sent them their welcome series, maybe it's not appropriate to send them pricing just yet. So it's looking at the types of communications that can help push them through the funnel to get them to be purchase ready. So that's your lead nurture. Re-engagements, we just talked about that. That's kind of your series where it's like your Hail Mary, here's something really great. Are you home? Do you want to communicate with us? Some of my favorite are very blunt, where it's like, hey, haven't heard from you in 6 months. Do you still want these? I appreciate that, because then I can be like, nope. Or yeah, I forgot about you guys. Keep me in here.
Yep.
So that's a re-engagement. And then you have, your promotional emails. It might be new product updates. It might be offers. It might be a gift that you'd like to give them, an invitation to something, whether it's this event, webinars, in-person events when we're able to do that again. But also under promotional emails, we might even stick in like your sales emails. So that in itself has a balance of what's appropriate to come from sales versus marketing, and what should be coming from the brand versus a person, and kind of balancing that look and feel and that experience, and using sales emails, once again, providing them value. Give them something to look forward to instead of us always asking for something. But the build of those emails is different too. So like your sales email might be more of a colloquial, text-based, maybe the only image in there is a logo, as to where if you want to send someone an invitation or maybe give them an offer, it might have more images in it. Also balancing how much content is live text versus how much is images. I'm hoping through this we can get into that a little bit more, but that balance is very important also to your sender reputation, because it's something that's looked at. Is your email all one image? Because if so, they're not going to think you're trustworthy. So that's another element that's looked at when looking at the health of your system. Fun stuff.
So much good information.
You've covered some great examples of various types of emails. A metric that I'm constantly looking to improve is the engagement with those emails. Can you touch on some areas and how people could get some better engagement?
For sure. That is a good segue, because we started digging into that just a little bit. So first and foremost, your best engagement is going to come from people that know you, that have opted in to receive your communications, right? So we keep talking about clean data. It's going to be very important. But the next thing is looking at those elements in your inbox. So it's your subject line, it's your pre-header, it's your from name, it's your reply to. So with your from name, like I said, there's a time when you should send emails from a brand, and there's a time when you should send them from a person. So making sure that your from name is something that your audience is going to recognize, it's going to resonate with them, they're going to know who you are. And then your reply to, many times people use like, I don't know, it's like contact@businessname.com instead of an active like, I'm a person here. I've seen businesses kind of spoof it. So it's like John Smith at business.com, and John Smith's not even a person, but it's still a monitored inbox. And the email comes from John Smith, this fake sales guy. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but you always want to make sure you're allowing someone to have an active reply to, just in case they have questions or want to tell you something, as well as a trustworthy from name. The next thing is a subject line. So subject lines are so important, and I don't think there's enough value put behind them, because that's like, you know, your one shot to get them interested into what is in your email. And that value should be first and foremost. So with subject lines, there's a lot of things. Number of characters. Are you using emojis? Are you using symbols? Are you putting what it is first? Are you using brackets? But the best thing that you can do with the subject line is deliver the what's in it for me, that value. What am I going to get from it? What's important to me as a recipient that's going to make me want to open this in a very crowded inbox. Urgency and relevancy. So having that in there is going to make me want to open it right now versus I'll come back to that later. So what can we be doing in order to make our subject lines more relevant, deliver that value, and make it urgent? Another good thing to do is play off that subject line with your pre-header. So your pre-header is actually that preview text. It shows up on your mobile, it shows up on your desktop. It usually has the first few sentences within the email, but you can actually code that into your email and use it as a way to kind of play off your subject line or continue to entice someone to open it. I always talk about it as like a series of micro yeses. So like, yes, I know who this email's from. Yes, I trust them. Yes, cool subject line, I'm in. Yes, I get what's going on in this email and I want to get in there. But with that, you have to make sure that you're delivering that in your email. Don't like bait and hook them. You want to make sure it's always a continual micro yes experience. So that's your subject line and your pre-header. So now all of that was leading into just getting someone to open your email. So once you get them to open it, there's a lot of things to consider on what's going on with that email design. One of them that I like to really put a lot of emphasis on is the balance of live text to images. And that's important not only because of your sender score and your sender reputation, but it's also important to know that many B2B companies turn images off when the email is coming in because it saves more room on their systems. So what is that experience if the images are turned off and they need to right click to download those images? Are you still able to deliver value and have the primary objective front and, you know, easy to consume without the images on? So you want to have headlines be in live text versus in an image, or your primary CTA probably shouldn't be an image. There are ways to code your CTA buttons to be live text over a colored box to make it look like a button, but it still shows up if your images are turned off. So there's some tricks that kind of go through that, but you always need to consider what is this experience when images are turned off. Other things as far as like the email design is people are like goldfish when we read our emails. You know, we're not going to be spending 5 minutes reading an email. The average read time is 7 to 11 seconds. So if you can't deliver your message in 7 to 11 seconds, or what I like to call is like your glance test, like you should be able to glance at an email and know exactly what I'm getting from it without having to read all this additional information. You can have it on there if you are able to hook them, but it needs to be very easy to consume. Bullet points, headlines, subheads, nice, easy, short, to the point, primary objectives clear. So it's a balance. The last element is more about like the types of images you're using. So black mode has become really popular over the last 2 years. And the way people experience emails in their inbox with black mode is super interesting. It changes colors, it does weird things with images. So if you want your images to render nicely, use PNGs instead of JPEGs, and that will help your logos render better, mastheads, different image assets in the email. So that's a nice little trick.
Wow, this is so great, Kelly. Go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
I see a future content piece. People are like goldfish coming from Brilliance, and that was fantastic. That might be my new favorite marketing line. People are like goldfish.
I'm really curious on what are some of your favorite email marketing tools, Kelly?
I have so many of them, but I am going to share a few. So either Litmus or Email on Acid. Both of those tools, they're paid for tools, so you do have to pay to use them. They have different subscription levels, but those will help you figure out how your email is rendering on different platforms and devices. So the way people engage nowadays, it's a mix between desktop for B2B as well as mobile for everyone else on the go. And B2B is also creeping up there with mobile. So making sure that those emails render nicely and you're giving a good experience on different devices and platforms, those tools will help you see what that looks like in order to fix it before it goes out the door. Another tool that's going to help you with your data is Bright Verify. So you can put your email list right in there. It's a penny per record. And what it's going to do is it's going to let you know if you could send email to that email address. Is it valid? Is someone home? Has that email inbox been active within the last, X amount of time? Is it safe to send to? It also tells you if you have spam traps in your email list. And spam traps are certainly going to hurt your sender score and sender reputation. But those are fake email addresses that are put out there on the internet and on LinkedIn. So if people are out there scraping them and you send email to them, they're going to know, and it's going to hurt your system. And so Bright Verify will let you know if you have any of those on your list, so you can make sure you remove them. World Data publishes an email calendar every year. They actually came out with a new one just for the pandemic because we started seeing different things happen, but it tells you every day of the year when's a good day to send, when you should probably consider maybe not sending, and days you should avoid sending to based on how people engage with their inbox. So that's a really great resource. Subjectline.com is another tool from World Data. It's where you can put your subject line into this little tool, and it kind of tells you things that you should consider doing. I always say use it with a grain of salt because they're not going to know your audience, they're not going to know the content of it, but they are going to look at characters or using spam words. Do you have urgency in there? So it helps you kind of think through what you could do in order to make it better, always keeping your audience in mind though. Live Clicker or Movable Ink, those are two of my favorite platforms. Those two are paid services, but it allows you to build real-time elements to go in your email, and it doesn't hurt the sending or deliverability of your email. It pulls in HTML and renders the experience in there for you. So those elements might be like a countdown timer or a carousel right in your email. You can do videos hosted in email, which is unheard of with HTML. You can do surveys right in your email. So these are types of experiences you can't do with normal HTML. You'd have to use a third-party platform. And the two I would recommend would be Live Clicker or Movable Ink. And then the last one I want to throw out there is Campaign Monitor. They have a lot of really great resources in their resource library, a lot of great white papers and different tools and a lot of different studies. They also do a benchmark report, so you can look for your industry and just kind of start to benchmark your performance against the industry performance and see how you kind of measure up. I always like to recommend that you use yourself as a benchmark, but it's nice to kind of know how you measure up against the industry as well. So if I had to throw some out there, those would be my favorite, but I got a whole box of tools if anyone ever wants more.
Well, I wish we could pretend that we were not at time, because I could listen to Kelly go on and on about how we could improve our strategy. So any closing notes from either of you?
Well, I guess I just hope people will connect with you, Kelly. I've learned so much. I think we can probably share some of the links of the tools that you shared when we share the video with people. But just the big takeaway, I think, for many of the customers we work with in the B2B space is to put some thought and be intentional about the steps that you're taking with email. Obviously, use these tips that you shared and resources and really think about how email can be a key part of your strategy.
Always put your customers first, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about the value that we're providing them, and the more value we can provide, the better that relationship's going to be, the more business you're going to get. So thank you for this opportunity. If anyone ever wants to, talk nerd email with me, I'm more than happy to. I'm just really passionate about the space and happy to answer any questions if you want to friend me on LinkedIn.
Well, sign me up. I think you'll be hearing from me here shortly. So no, thank you, Kelly, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to support us in this conversation. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic Friday.
Thanks, everyone.